Let's talk about startups. My name is Alexei, and this is Better Business Podcast. I meet a lot of startups and business owners who are looking to change something, or people that just have a side hustle that they basically want to make their main focus. Yesterday, in fact, I went to a networking event where I met a few startups, and it's always interesting to see people with different ideas and different motivations behind the whole thing. But the fact of the matter is, majority of startups make exactly the same mistakes, and that's what I want to talk about today. So let me share a few tips. I think that it's super important to look at the first thing as clarity. I mean, this is probably not what you want to hear as a startup, but you got to get super clear on what it is that you're actually going to do. And I'm not talking about the actual business. You may have a pretty good idea about the actual service that you're looking to provide and how you're going to provide it, hopefully. But the biggest issue is really to do with some sort of a business plan. And when I talk about a business plan, I want to understand the numbers. I want to understand the actual product that is being sold, because typically when we start as a business owner, and I know I'm guilty of it as well, when I was starting my web design thing, I wouldn't really call it a business, to be honest. I tried sort of tailoring specifically to just about everybody. I didn't have any understanding of what people want. And it's almost like you instantly think that you want to become jack of all trades. You want to try a bit of everything. You want to start including everything. But the reality is you're selling yourself short. You're selling yourself at a fraction of the price compared to most of your competitors. And you probably don't feel very confident in your services as well. So for that reason, you feel like, hey, I got to learn social media or Google Ads or SEO. And as a result, you're only able to provide a very mediocre service unless you obviously know what you're doing and you're super talented. And look, sometimes I do meet people like that. And I think, what's really important is to really understand who is your customer, what product you're selling, and how much you're going to charge for it. Because once you get clear like that, then you have a business plan. So, okay, you're charging, I don't know, $3,000 for a website. It takes you about 2 weeks. This is what's included. And this is the sort of customers that it's for. You can really standardize it and make it, easy to understand. Otherwise, a lot of people get caught up in things like, death by design. Hey, the client wants one thing and you just keep including things. Products are not defined. Your service goes on forever. You don't get paid. If that sounds familiar, that is what I'm talking about here. So get clear. Make sure you understand exactly what your business is about, and make sure you also understand the end result. What is the actual goal? If your goal is to make $5,000 a month and you're doing this, I don't know, on the weekends or after hours, that's one thing. If you want to go full time, what would you need to do that? What sort of resources? What sort of environment? Oftentimes, startups, especially when it comes to digital businesses, don't really consider any additional costs, and everything seems astronomical. I mean, I remember my first office was like $300 a month, which included a desk and an internet connection in the back of a print shop. And I thought that was just going to break my bank because I just really didn't know exactly how that was going to work out. But over time, like I look back at it and say, man, that was probably the cheapest way to get into a business. You get your own environment, you're connected to another business that they can potentially provide, leads and customers to you, which they did. And the whole thing really pays for itself really fast. So I think it's just that belief into what you do and how you do it that really makes things easy. I have seen people that decided to launch their business with like a seminar, for example, and they spent all their dollars trying to promote a seminar where no one knew them. They paid for an expensive venue, catering, and they had like 3 people show up and nobody bought from that. That's really painful, guys. So make sure you minimize your losses and get super clear about the exercise you're about to pull off. I'm not trying to discourage you from doing that, but just make sure that you minimize the damage on your bank account and the time that you spend when you do things like that. In fact, failing is probably the best advice for any startup that I can give you. You got to really fail. That's the best way you're going to learn. You either pay somebody to do something for you, and look, a lot of startups attempted for people to come in and do things for them. But a lot of the time, because they don't really have a service aligned, no proof of concept, no sales process, no defined processes, then the whole thing really crumbles down. So get clear, guys. Make sure you minimize the damage from your mistakes, and I wish you luck. The second tip I'd like to give you is in relation to the overall plan. So the idea is to build a scalable and a saleable business. My business coach, Anthea, told me that a long time ago. It would have been about 12 years ago. And it took me a long time to really understand what that means. Scalable means that it's something that you can basically build and keep scaling. And if you look at successful businesses, scalability is achieved by two things: either systems or people, or a combination of the two things. So systems is where you've got like CRMs, automation, where you've got tools that basically do work for you. So it's not just all about yourself. And people is about people who can share your vision and work under your supervision, or potentially work alongside you to deliver the end result. If you're trying to do everything yourself, most likely you're going to end up with a self-employed scenario, which is going to sound like another job. And if that obviously gets you more money than you working for somebody else, that's great. However, there's pros and cons with that, and I highly recommend that you maybe have a look at Robert Kiyosaki's book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, which talks about the different areas of cash flow, and that really makes a lot of sense once you read through the book. So I won't spoil it, but yeah, I'll make sure to put the link in the description of this video or audio, whatever you guys are listening to. So scalable should make sense. Essentially, if you have a vision to do something, to deliver a product, you want to make sure that this particular service gets delivered in a certain way. It's consistent, it gets things done, and then customers are super happy. So then from there, this saleable part. So you always need to think of a business with the end in mind. I mean, I've made those mistakes, and in fact, the business that I mainly run is one of those where I'm the center of the business, but I actually enjoy doing that. So if the overall idea is to create a saleable asset, that's how you really need to look at it. And a lot of people don't get it. Like people getting into the business saying, hey, how am I going to sell it in the future? But the reality is I meet too many business owners that have been running their business for tens of years. And once they sort of ready to retire, they've got no idea how to pull out of the business without just shutting the shop. The reality is that business is worth a lot of dollars, and you only need a few tweaks to really set it up in that particular way. So there's a few ways to go about it. And look, I'm not really a person to talk about selling a business, but I want to talk to you about what actually makes up the value of the business. First of all, it's your database. So if you have a database of people, names, emails, and you've got good interaction with those people, that is worth a lot of dollars. If you got any intellectual property, that is worth a lot of dollars as well. If you have a particular asset behind the business, like property or equipment assets, that's obviously worth the dollars as well. But most importantly, if you have a unique system behind the business, your process, that's essentially what people want to tap into. So if you have a CRM and it's adjusted a certain way specifically to service your business, that is exactly what you're trying to sell. And on top of that, you've got things like contract with clients that provide certainty of cash flow, people, team culture, and so on that really are quite valuable. But it's going to take you a little bit of time to realize that. And some things are a little bit harder to measure than others. But make sure you look at it as saleable. If this is all German to you, I highly recommend that you have a look at maybe Seek Business, which is a website that helps people sell a business, and have a look at some of the businesses for sale there. Because what you can do, you can actually make an inquiry with someone who's selling a business and ask them for information. Now, if you're a startup and you're looking for ideas as to how to set up a business, this is a pro tip for you. They will definitely give you all the financials. They'll explain to you exactly how the business works and hope that you'll actually buy that. And I highly encourage you to actually consider that option, because sometimes it's a lot easier to buy an existing business as opposed to start a new one. And oftentimes what happens is when you buy a business, the business owner will stay around for a period of time, depending on your engagement. Bigger companies are typically sold with 1 to 2 years of the business owner still being in charge while they learn and see exactly how things work. So check out businesses for sale, and that will hopefully get you to understand exactly what I mean as well. And look, selling a business is a whole new topic. We can talk about it another time, but there's ways to potentially sell the business, license the business, franchise the business, fraction the business. Limitless. But why this is important, it helps you understand exactly what you're heading towards. And this way you can set up along the way without having to do it all last minute. Now, number 3, and I think that's the most important tip I'm going to give you today, and that's probably not what you want to hear, but I'm going to tell you anyway, is do not work with idiots, okay? You want to make sure that you set your boundaries and you work with the right people. People that respect you, people that pay you on time, people that understand exactly the value that you're delivering. And believe me, this is going to give you a lot of peace of mind and joy, because anyone who's passionate about what they do often comes across difficult customers, and trying to work with those customers sometimes really just spoils the entire exercise of running the business. So I highly recommend that you set those boundaries, outline those policies, and I don't know, maybe put that as a part of your vision and so. But in my business specifically, I have a policy that there's zero abuse. If any of my customers decide to be rude or don't want to work with us a certain way, we have no contracts. And that for particular reason, we will just shake their hand and walk away if it's obviously all polite. Otherwise, we just would not work with them. And look, the stress that this may cause could be a lot greater than you think, because at the end of the day, if you got employees or if you got contractors that are getting abused or not being dealt with properly, that is a complete nightmare, guys. I'm not sure, if you've come across anything like that. For some of you, this may be common sense. For others, a lot of people are, happy to take anyone on board, but you just don't want any of your team to suffer as a result. So highly recommend you look at that. Also, I think, working with people that somewhat understand and respect what you do as well, because if people don't trust you or they think of you, less, you're just not going to get that pleasure of dealing with them. And look, I'm talking about potentially working in a service-based business environment where you provide a service, where there's a lot of customer service and interaction with customers. If you got a product or if you got a solution, you may not have as much of that happening. But at the end of the day, you just don't want these problems because they will really sour the entire thing as well. So look for those red flags and make sure you don't ignore those. So look, these are the 3 tips I wanted to share with you, because I think a lot of the time as a startup, you just don't know where to go and you just want to, jump onto something and get something happening. Well, that regardless could be the way to go. Just make sure you minimize the damages on your bank account and also on your reputation as well. And look for the right sort of customers. Make sure you check out networking groups. Make sure you have a look at forums. Make sure you check out, outsourcing type places like Upwork if you're in the digital marketing or design space. And make sure that you let all your close friends and family know exactly about what you do, because they may be the first customers that you're actually going to get. Maybe not the best ones, but they will be definitely pushing you along the way to help you with your vision. Anyway, my name is Alexei. This is Better Business Podcast. I hope you found this useful. If so, please hit like below, share and comment on this video. Would really appreciate it. And I wish you a great day.